Hi, welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles Festival in partnership with Movie Maker magazine. I'm Carolyn McDonald and I'm here at Emerson College with filmmaker Jessica Sarah Flaum and her film Abortion Add to Cart. Let's take a look at a clip.
As we were in these very rural areas, these parts of the highlands of Ethiopia and parts of Ghana where you had to walk, we would go to the drugstores and the pharmacies and ask our colleagues from those countries to go in to find out what was available there. And we discovered that abortion pills were available.
And here we are standing on the streets with abortion pills in our hand, and yet in the United States, we can't have access to them. Or if you can access a clinic, they're $800 for the service. And we asked the question, well, what would we find if we started surfing the web for abortion pills?
Hey, Jessica, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. It's so great to have you here today. So tell us about your just amazingly informative and just moving, so many things about this film. Tell us, what was your inspiration for making the film?
Yeah, so I actually discovered the story while I was scrolling on Facebook. I saw an article about self-managed abortion, which is what the film is about, and I was pretty surprised because I had considered myself very up-to-date on abortion politics. It was something I was passionate about, that I followed a lot, and I had no idea that people were getting access to abortion pills kind of outside of the traditional healthcare system in the United States. And it was really surprising to me and just very interesting, and I realized that this was a story that definitely needed to be told. Especially for people like me who are pro-choice, who do support abortion rights, but had no idea that this method was even available or possible. So that was really the reason that I decided to make the film, and that journey started about 2 years ago in February of 2020.
So tell me, how did you find the subjects? What was that process like, finding these women?
It was a little complicated specifically for our storytellers who were telling their self-managed abortion stories, because the legality surrounding self-managed abortion is quite complicated, which we do go into in the film as well. So this wasn't something that we were going to just run into someone on the street and know that they had had a self-managed abortion. People talking about abortion in general can be a very touchy subject. Not everyone is comfortable sharing their stories, and this specifically added a whole other layer to it. In terms of Alice, we were actually able to find her through social media and connect with her. I had no prior connection to her before. And we were so lucky that she was really open with her story and just wanted to help other people, who may face the same situation she faced, and wanted to tell her story. Ari, we actually connected with through Renee Bracey-Sherman, who does We Testify. She's also featured in the film, and we were lucky to be able to feature Ari's story as well. But two really different stories to try to show kind of the broad range of experiences in terms of self-managed abortion.
Yeah, it was two very different stories. And what was the process like for earning their trust to tell these stories? I mean, I think as you said, Alice was a little, easier. She wanted to talk about her story, but Ari, it was a bit different. What was that process like?
Yeah, we had to consult with a lawyer to talk about what were the best ways to protect our subjects. And we were really lucky to work with If One How, who was also featured in the film. They have a lot of guidelines for filmmakers to be able to protect their subjects when talking about self-managed abortion from, prosecution or investigations. So some of those things were, not disclosing their real names. These are fake names that we're using, not disclosing their locations, not disclosing the weeks at which they terminated, things like that. And so that was kind of our baseline. We started with that. We committed to these various protections for our subjects. But then it was really about going to the subjects and saying, here's what we want to do. Now, what other things can we do to make you feel comfortable, or that you're going to need in order to feel comfortable telling your story? And that was different for each subject that we had. So for Alice, she was comfortable being on camera and telling her story that way. For Ari, they weren't comfortable being on camera, and so we actually had an actor telling their story and basically saying a monologue that was just transcripts of our conversation with Ari. And in the end, I think it really turned out really well, and we were lucky to be able to, I think, tell both stories to the fullest, even though we did use an actor. But I think that part of it actually just reinforced, the idea that people really have real fear about the possibility that they might be criminalized for, their pregnancy outcomes and their choices that they make about their own body. And, we filmed this before the overturning of Roe v. Wade, but that has become obviously even more of a danger now that that's happened as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So now that had Roe versus Wade overturned, how does that affect this process that you've learned? What did you learn about how that's going to affect that?
Yeah, I mean, when we were on the ground meeting we have a lot of abortion activists in our film, a lot of people who have worked in this space for years, and I will say, when you were on the ground filming with them, it was very clear that they saw this coming and they were trying to raise the alarms. But, I think for years people have considered them alarmists, that, this isn't really what's going to happen. Roe v. Wade is it's been precedent upon precedent. At least that's what we were told, right? So it was something that we were always aware was definitely a real possibility and that they felt like was coming, but it still was just as shocking and disappointing regardless. In terms of the film, what's interesting about it is there are certainly some things in the film. For example, some of our maps now don't look quite the same anymore in terms of, when we show some of the rules and regulations state by state. Those are a little different now. The clinic in West Virginia, Women's Health Center of West Virginia, is no longer providing abortions. Abortions have been completely outlawed in the state of West Virginia. But what is really lucky is that most of the services featured in the film are still available. So
That's
Aid
fantastic.
Access, run by Dr. Rebecca Gompertz, is still sending pills to all 50 states, regardless of the laws there. Plan C is still operating and providing the resources for people to find pills online. If When How, the legal organization, is still providing legal services for people who need help understanding how to protect themselves if they perform a self-managed abortion. So all the information in the film is still accurate and available, and that's why we still feel it's so important regardless of the overturning, and maybe even more important now.
I would say that, I felt that way as I was watching it. So in the course of you making the film, what were some things that you learned about this process of self-managed abortion that you learned the most from and benefit the most from, that you would like to share with your audience?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest reasons I decided to make the film was when I started telling people about the research I was doing about self-managed abortion. I started talking to people and just kind of getting their takes and hearing how much prior knowledge they had. And a lot of people actually weren't familiar with the abortion pill. Some people thought I was talking about Plan B, which is a different thing. And the abortion pill has actually been around for over 22 years.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it was approved in 2000 and has been used in the United States, and it actually is the majority of abortions in the United States. When you go to a Planned Parenthood or a local clinic, you can have an aspiration abortion or you can have a medication abortion, and it accounts for, I think, at this point, 54% of all abortions in the United States are with this pill. And so I think the term self-managed abortion can be confusing and it can be scary, but the reality is, even when you're going to a clinic and you're getting this medication, you're typically taking it on your own. And so you're pretty much self-managing your abortion regardless. You're just getting the pill from a provider instead of from the internet, which is what people in our film were doing. And so the concept isn't that new in that way. So the biggest thing I hope people learn and understand from the film, and the biggest thing I learned, is that this isn't number one, self-managed abortion is not a new concept, but even self-managing abortion with pills is not very different than what happens every day out of clinics. And it can be very safe and very effective if people have the right information, and that's really just what we need to do, is get the information out there so people can make the best decisions for their lives.
Exactly, exactly. And again, it's very, very informative and very and practical, because as you just said, it's been around for a very long time, which I personally wasn't even aware of, you know. So tell us about the production of the film itself. Over what kind of time frame did you shoot the film?
So as I mentioned, we started development in February of 2020, so right before COVID hit. Actually, what was somewhat lucky about the whole thing is that when COVID did happen, we were in development. So during the times where it was really hard to film, and there was just a lot of unknowns about COVID at that point, we were still in development. And people were sitting in their homes, doing nothing basically. And so when we were reaching out to people had time to talk to us, and they were interested in talking to us. So I feel like we got access to people in ways that maybe we wouldn't have if that wasn't happening, which was kind of a weird bright side of it, I guess. And then we ended up starting to film October of that year, going into the next year. I guess we did filming for about 8 months, just kind of shoots over the course of that time. And we were shooting during COVID, which definitely kept things a little more complicated, as everyone who has had to shoot during COVID knows. But I think one of the interesting things that came out of it is that we shot a lot in people's homes, which is not really a setting that you think about when you think about an abortion documentary. You think about, clinics and hospitals, I guess, if you will, things like that. But it was pretty indicative of the subject, which is that this is happening in people's homes.
Right.
And so even our experts who, are medical doctors and have masters in public health, we filmed them in their homes too, which was kind of an interesting different setting that you don't typically see them in, and I think it just really reflected the subject well. So
I
that was
think
kind of interesting.
absolutely you made it personal. You made it very personal. It wasn't an out there thing where you gave it that same license that people have. It's a personal choice. You took it to people's homes, to where they live. So yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And what kind of crew did you have going to these, and what part of the country mainly was this shot in?
Yeah, we shot in Los Angeles, we shot up in Portland, and then we shot kind of all up and down the East Coast. We did a big East Coast trip where we traveled from West Virginia all the way kind of up north. And in terms of our crew, it was pretty small. I think max on set we would only have 5 people, including the subject, and even sometimes it was smaller than that. And we did also utilize some virtual shooting, which for subjects who weren't comfortable meeting in person, we would actually send filming equipment to them, and they would set it up, and we would connect with them over Zoom, and we would actually be able to see the video feed that we were seeing from the camera through Zoom. And so we were able to do that as well for people that we didn't meet in person.
That's great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Very clever. Yeah, very, very clever.
Gotta make it work.
Gotta make it work, filmmaker, right. But again, it gave it such intimacy. That's one of the things I really did appreciate about the film. It had a great intimacy and level of trust. It's like these women really trusted what they were talking about, trusting, sharing, with you. Yeah, absolutely. So it's now at, playing at NewFilmmakers LA. It's a great festival. So what other places would you like to see it play and be available so that it can be shared, with women that may need this information?
Absolutely. We've been lucky to be playing at a number of awesome festivals. We've got a couple more coming up as well. We also have an educational distributor called Good Docs that's
Nice.
helping us get it to colleges, universities, nonprofits, places like that, to be able to screen it as an educational resource. We've had a number of activist groups approach us about, showing it as, just education, really.
Yeah.
And so it's been really amazing to see it go in those different places, and we're just continuing to try to get the message out there, through festivals like this one as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm very glad to hear that. So tell us, what else have you got coming down the pipeline? Where can people follow you about this film, and anything else you have coming up?
You can follow me. My Instagram is at Jessica Sarah Flaum, my name, and then the film's Instagram is at Abortion at Descartes. So you can follow news about it there. In terms of what's next for me, I'm also an actor and a writer, so I have a web series that's premiering its season 2 in December. It's called PBC. So
Nice.
not documentary, but just kind of another side of my career. So that's a little bit of what's next for me. And then just continuing to go to festivals with Abortion at Descartes and continuing to spread the word.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, congratulations
Thank you.
and good luck with everything going forward. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Alrighty, everyone, Jessica.